Oh no, a highly advanced EMP blast has disabled every smartphone in the world. Lucky for me, I store my PSP in the fridge. Alright, no matter how you spin this, using a PSP for everyday life is a strange concept. I did once use mine for everything, but that was a long time ago and the options were fairly limited. The PSP can do a lot with homebrew. Pretty much everything you could realistically achieve on this hardware was accomplished in some form. It was a lot of fun to mess around with back in the day. Thanks to the community, the PSP became this ever-evolving device that could do something new and crazy every week. Now that we have modern smartphones with built-in storefronts that you can access anytime, anywhere, the appeal for doing all this on a PSP is completely gone. All we're left with now is the intriguing historical component. So for no other reason beyond what-ifs, here's how you could use your PSP for everyday living. I don't have a video out cord for my 3000, so I hope this camera footage will suffice. Let's start with simple task management. First, I had thought of a notepad. You know, something that uses the official PSP keyboard. I'd love to be proven wrong, but from the few options I tried, that just doesn't exist. No, you have to navigate some kind of typing wheel, and look, I love wheels for inventory selection in games, but I do not like them for typing. The official PSP keyboard is actually great for a device without a touchscreen. Back in the day, I was able to make quick notes with it no problem. But how, you ask? By using the internet search option in the XMB. You just click, start writing your note, hit start, and then exit out of the Wi-Fi search. Boom! And I don't think there's a limit to how many of these you can make. All these years later, and it still seems to be the go-to method for making a quick note on your PSP. Now how about something a little more complex? This is Booker, a text and PDF reader. I was curious to see how far you could push this thing. The PSP can read photos of pretty much any size, although slowly, so maybe this would work well? I tried various documents of different sizes and the results were somewhat poor. A lot of PDFs would only partially load, many would read far too slow, a couple crashed my PSP, others just gave me a white screen. Everything I had on hand except for the Magnavox Odyssey Specialist Guide didn't really work. The ones included with the app worked just fine, although they were essentially just text documents. So the more basic the document is, the more likely it is to work. I will say the app itself is quite functional. You can bookmark stuff, zoom in, lots of options for skipping forward. For what actually works on this thing, it's pretty darn good. During its prime, this was probably a decent option for reading stuff on the go. Next, we have a calculator app, Calcula PSP. It's a calculator. You could just imagine using this in school back in the day. What? I'm not playing games. It's a calculator. Pretty good calculator app, by the way. Has all the functions you would need, and it's color-coded so everything sticks out well. So this one is a measuring tool by the name of On-Screen Measure PSP. You can stop one dot, then move another, and the number on the left will tell you how far away it is in centimeters or inches. Smart idea. I wouldn't assume everyone's carrying around a ruler, right? These days you're probably not carrying around a PSP either, but the concept is solid. Granted, you can only measure within the screen size of a PSP, though it could still be useful for some things. Here's an alarm clock called PSP Alarm. I actually really like this one, but the first impression isn't great. It appears visually cluttered. Thankfully, most of that is from the background image that you can easily edit yourself. Pressing right trigger brings you to the alarm where it can be manually set. Doing so plays an epic gunshot sound, which is just a wave file that you can also replace. The alarm is music from a Mario game, which is nice. It is always a bit strange to see on a non-Nintendo device. Once you've set an alarm, you can press start to put the system on sleep mode, and it'll actually wake up when the time is reached. I'm kind of amazed by that, to be honest. If your battery's in good shape, you won't need to keep it plugged in all night. This is a stopwatch by the name of Shootwatch Hudson PSP. It's actually a recreation of some Hudson Game & Watch-like toy from the 80s where you could test how many times you can press a button in 10 seconds. Okay. Well, I'm in it for the stopwatch. Press select enough times until you see this, then press X to start. Circle to stop. Start clears the time. Pretty cool. Wish I knew about this back when. Now here we have a random chance app that lets you either toss a die or flip a coin. The app in question is called PSP Psych. The launcher keeps looping this song called I Know You Know by the Friendly Indians, which is annoying. It's a simple app. Make either selection, then do the thing. I don't know why Baby Mario's on the coin. You could use Photoshop to edit the PNG into a real coin if you like, I guess. A flashlight app, huh? Sure, let's see. This one is called PSP Lite. Well, it's about as effective as loading a plain white image in the XMB, to be honest. Though you do get some alternate lights, including a sort of strobe feature, which was kinda neat to project onto things in the dark. Not really fulfilling its purpose, though. Alright everyone, it's time to read your Bibles. This is the Good Booker PSP. It's a customized version of that earlier Booker app that has the entire King James Bible loaded into it. I don't actively attend a church, but back when I did, anytime I brought my own Bible, it would always be hard to match whatever version the church was using. You do get a search function in this, which would technically make that easier, but yeah, I don't know. You would no doubt get looks from people, especially today. Better just use this at home. And alright, I get it, you came for homebrew apps, not Hebrew apps, so let's move on. This is PSP Metronome, and it's one of those extremely simple apps that looks like command prompt. You can adjust speeds, start, and stop. Does exactly as described, nothing more, nothing less. I think it's worth mentioning that back in the day, if you didn't have something like a metronome, you would probably have to go out and buy one. PSP apps like this actually saved you money.
Here's a voice recorder known as Audio Mechanica Kai PSP. It works with all PSP microphone types, yes, there's a lot of them, and you'll have to make the correct selection. My PSP 3000 here has a built-in microphone, which isn't pictured, but the headset option claims to be the same. There are a few recording options that follow. The two that you're most likely to use are the direct recording mode or buffered recording mode. Direct has no time limit, but audio can skip. Buffered does have a time limit, but shouldn't record any skips. I'm not sure what the time limit is. I recorded for over 3 minutes and it kept going. I did notice that if you keep your mouth close to the microphone, it becomes overexposed, so try to keep it a few feet away. Recordings save into a folder found in your music section. Now, as you might have guessed, I recorded this segment with the PSP microphone. How does it sound to you?
What you're hearing now is the PSP 300 camera microphone. It has a lot of background fuzz, but I did notice it performs better close up to your mouth than further away.
Now we're once again using the 3000's internal microphone, and I feel like this one's a bit tinny.
This 300 camera microphone sounds warmer. It might come up to personal preference, but I prefer the camera microphone. Those were all the task-related apps I have to show for today, but I did want to at least mention the existence of IR-related apps for the PSP 1000 exclusively. This would let you turn your PSP into a remote control, for whatever devices you can find that still use infrared. An old CRT is the best example I can think of. Most today probably wouldn't get much use out of this, and it apparently requires a fair bit of setting up to work, so I don't really recommend you try that, but boy did people have fun with this back in the day. There's also a GPS device that you could buy in Japan or Europe, which apparently still works, as it uses satellite data. I found this one image from Gamnesia of someone mounting it into their car. Very, very cool. I would rock that. Now we're moving on to leisure-related apps, starting with Go Paint PSP. There are a few painting programs that you can download, but this seemed to be the most advanced. Apparently it's the only one with an undo button, which is pretty much essential, right? Unfortunately, it seems to only be in the Spanish language, though considering its use of picture imagery, you can pretty much work around that. The app starts with 3 long splash screens. Ugh. Fun fact, for most PSP homebrew you can simply delete the splash screen images and it'll go straight to the app, but sadly not the case for this one.
Vagina?
I know, right? Isn't that weird?
This is a blooper for you. Vagina.
It's like a different word completely.
Dot to paint vagina? Is that what it said?
It would take forever to explain everything, you know, like I actually spent significant time with this thing. But the basics are options with start, tool selection with triangle plus L or R, gadgets with circle, cursor speed up by holding square, and of course, draw with X. For everything else, there's a better explanation on the GameBrew page. I do wish I didn't have to actively hold square to speed up the cursor, but that's about the only complaint I can think of. Though, of course, I do wish there was an English translated version of it. Maybe someday? Now, you know what always goes well with art? I better watch what I say here, don't want to get demonetized. But yeah, there's an app for the PSP that can supposedly give you a similar feeling to getting toasted. It's called PSP iDoser, and plays one of 4 different sounds. Put on your headphones and listen between 30 to 45 minutes to simulate the effect. The only one of these I've cared to try is the Old Mary, so I'm now gonna listen for 45 minutes to tell you whether or not I feel something. Okay, it was kind of relaxing. I thought it would get on my nerves after some time, but not so much. I do myself listen to white noise at night, so I'm fairly accustomed to this idea. But it doesn't make me feel toasted or anything, just helps for keeping a clear head, I guess. In that regard, I don't think this is a genuine thing, but you can give yourself a placebo effect maybe. By the way, this is one of a few apps that doesn't work with the category hack, but you can actually work around this by putting the app in the regular game directory, then hitting square when you enter a category.
Apparently this app plays a frequency that scares away mosquitoes. It works!
Okay, this next app, I'm not a big fan of. Easily the worst joke ever made on this channel. The app is called FanMate PSP, which was originally made for the Palm Pilot. I guess that makes sense. The Palm was known for tons of weird nonsense like this. I wish it played some kind of sound, like a relaxing fan noise maybe. In the past I've kept a YouTube window open of fan sounds running because I've always found them soothing. That would have given this app an actual purpose, but in reality it's just a couple repeating frames of pixel art. And that concludes the leisure apps, though I did want to mention eBuddy. It was a direct messaging service that you could access with the internet browser, and many of us would use that back when to chat simultaneously on MSN, Facebook Messenger, and more. It was discontinued long ago, so that one is completely left in the past. Now enjoy this ancient video of me streaming the Dolphin emulator to my PSP because that was a thing you could do. I think the application was called PSP Disp. Go ahead and Google that if you want. Let's talk about PSP Pictures. You can load most image formats on the PSP natively, and while it's a bit slow for higher resolution photos, it's still fully functional. You could sort of use a PSP for makeshift PowerPoint presentations, I guess. Geez, imagine that. Someone has to take you seriously while scrolling through PSP photos in the big 2026. One idea I had long ago was to make a PSP into a wall-mounted photo album. There are various slideshow options available, so you'd really just have to keep it plugged in, but then I thought about it some more. You can find these kinds of devices at any thrift store for $5 or less, so using a PSP for that would be kinda dumb, but you can do it, I guess. Oh boy, the PSP camera. I guess I bought one at the right time because I paid 130 Canadian in March 2025, and now they can sell for twice that amount. Yes, this tiny thing here. In my case, the PSP 300, which is a 1.3 megapixel camera. There was a later model released with the Invisimals game called the PSP 450, and it has a 0.3 megapixel camera. Pretty big difference. I contemplated getting that one instead because it's a lot cheaper, but I saw reference images online and yeah. If you're looking to do some cool retro photography, the 300 does the job, but the 450's like a $5 webcam. Something both cameras share in common is that you can rotate them 180 degrees. After the halfway point, the image on screen will rotate. I know this is pretty much an essential function, but I figured it should be mentioned regardless. Now, when I bought this thing last year, I used it pretty consistently for about 3 months, taking a large variety of pictures and videos which I'll show on screen. As you might have guessed, this was supposed to be its own separate video, but instead I've made it into a big chunk of this one. Anyways, I took this media at the highest resolution available because, well, why would I do otherwise? For the sake of comparison, I'll show you the difference. Here's 320 by 240, here's 480 by 272, which is the native PSP resolution, here's 640 by 480, and here's 1280 by 960. Like resolution, you can change a variety of other settings like white balance. Here's the automatic setting, the daylight setting, the fluorescent setting, and the incandescent setting. I'm not a huge photography guy, obviously I enjoy it, but no professional here. I'm sure there are more optimal environments for testing these things, but hopefully this gives you some kind of insight. It wasn't until after I took most of these pictures that I discovered you could twist the lens barrel to adjust the focus. There are only 2 selections to make though, one mode called Standard and another called Macro. Standard is for normal photography, Macro lets you focus on close-up objects. I don't know which I had it on for most of these photos, but my guess is it was on Standard. This I found interesting. Take a look at these 2 photos. They were taken merely seconds apart from each other, no change in options, and yet despite that, you can tell the color balance is a little different between them. Just for shits and giggles, here's a comparison between an iPhone and the PSP camera at its highest resolution. Yikes. I found that certain locations or lighting conditions never make for a good photo on the PSP camera no matter what settings you tinker with. Especially so with certain indoor lighting, which will often give the photo this yellowy contrast. Very familiar to old digital cameras from that time. This all might be a disservice to the camera because it's not like you can't get good looking pictures out of this. Here are a few examples of photos I took that I thought looked nice. Here's a picture of a restaurant menu, which is kind of readable. I went to a car show and yeah, here's a visible example of people looking at you when you pull this thing out. It's unavoidable. You might initially think, hey, that's cool, but it sure doesn't feel like it. Especially because you have to stay pretty darn still to take a decent photo. I've deleted most of my photos that didn't turn out, but here's one. Expect to delete a lot of these. Oh yeah, there are some filters you can mess about with called effects. This is Sketch, which makes the photo resemble a pencil drawing. Toy Camera gives you this purple aura? I don't get it. Distortion adds a line of distortion to the middle, which I guess lets you take funny pictures. And text is just black and white. I'm not sure why it's called that. These effects can only be used on photos, not videos. Likely because the frame rate goes to shit when you turn them on. Once you've taken photos, if you go to view them in your photo folder, you can select Information to see what settings and resolution you used for it. Interestingly, it specifies whether you used flash or not, despite there's no flash functionality on either PSP camera. So in regards to recording videos with your PSP camera, there are two resolutions to choose from, but you can select between 15 or 30 frames per second. I always kept it at the highest resolution, which is the native PSP resolution, 480 by 272. And of course 30 frames per second. Who do you think I am? Here I'm shaking some dressing bottle. Looked a lot cooler in person. This was recorded in a concert hall. You can hear that it captured audio quite well.
Where Tchaikovsky was going with his symphonic writing, and it's a really beautiful symphony in so many ways.
Now that reminds me, I had intended to take some photos during the symphony, but there's this loud, obnoxious shutter sound that plays whenever you do. I did take a few, but only when the audience was cheering. You can select between 5 different sounds for the shutter, but it doesn't seem like you can outright disable it. And no, muting the PSP makes no difference. For whatever reason, there's actually no sound that plays when you start a video, so if this isn't to alert everyone around you that you took a photo, then what's the point exactly? Well, anyways, I was recording this goo toy and I noticed during playback around 30 seconds or so that the audio started crackling. And this isn't the only time this has happened to me, but I couldn't find a consistent reason for it. This happens occasionally, where this black frame will flash some seconds after I start recording a video. Really unsure of why, or whether I have a defective unit or not. Another recurring issue was the audio going off sync. It wasn't terribly common, but did happen more with longer recordings. And yes, this was in a cinema playing the Minecraft movie. That guy had no idea he'd be in a YouTube video. He was in it for the meme. As long as you ain't throwing chickens around and dropping popcorn boxes, you know what? Respect.
Need for seed.
Now who's up for an old school Let's Play, huh?
Hello everyone and welcome to my Animal Crossing Wild World playthrough. I just bought a cabin wardrobe, I'm about to buy a cabin wardrobe.
If you didn't shield your ears already, you'll want to for this recording of a windy lake. Can you see the helicopter? Surely you can see the boat. Man, this just makes me wish I recorded it with a better camera. Ditto. So yeah, much like with photos, videos will only look and sound good in certain conditions. In the case of video recording, you don't get many options at all, so take it or leave it. There was an issue I came across sometimes where if you would record and stop in quick succession, the entire PSP can hardlock, requiring a reboot. It's hard to say what the cause of that issue was. One thing I did really like about taking PSP videos is that the file sizes are so freaking small. A minute's recording is about 30 megabytes. I tried the same with similar visuals on my Galaxy S23, and that was 445 megabytes. Of course, this does come at the cost of significantly worse visuals and audio, if that matters to you, which it very likely does. Thought I would mention, you can't use any of the camera models on a PSP Go because it lacks the mini B USB input. Except actually, there's an extremely obscure add-on that allows you to connect the camera, and it looks ridiculous. I had no idea this even existed until recently. You might be curious how the PS Vita's internal camera compares to this. I actually thought it was worse, to be honest. It's so similar to some crappy mid-2010s phone camera, and I mean, maybe one day we'll look at this and think, dang, what an aesthetic, but presently it hangs in that window of, oh, this is very outdated. You can do 360 panoramas, which is pretty cool. This is the only reason I would ever use this camera, though. And that's all I have to say, really. But as it turns out, our longtime friend PSPMan has the later released 450 PSP camera, so I asked him if he'd like to chime in with his opinion of it.
So the 450 camera is the one that came with all the games. I think there's only 4 games that use it, but don't quote me on that. The games that sold with one came in a bigger box. Inside, the camera got its own dedicated section containing it and the manual. This here is a bundle that was sold with editing software in Japan, called Shoutout Edit. Shoutout is what the 300 camera was called in Japan. As far as I know, it's the only physical game that was sold with the 300 model. In Europe, the 300 was officially called the Go Cam, which is what I've always personally called PSP cameras, and was sold as a standalone accessory. At least, that's what I always thought. So, up until today, I always thought this editing software never left Japan, meaning none of the English-speaking countries ever got this. Ladies and gentlemen, we got this. Shoutout Edit was translated as Go Edit for release in Europe. It was kinda sold with the GoCam. From what I understand, it was free to download online, and this bundle came with some type of advertisement that told customers about it. The application has been preserved, so let's check it out. Go Edit allows you to take photos and record videos directly through the application, edit them, and then make them available on your PSP system memory, which can then be moved to a PC. The software is hosted by Tinkerbot here, who will give you helpful hints until you turn them off. His blurbs block some of the menus, so it didn't take me long to do that. The software is surprisingly robust for what it is. Videos unfortunately seem to have a 15-second recording limit, and I noticed you can only overlay so many effects. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this through this. So, I have to look at this thing. I'm holding the PSP, and it's kind of hard to like keep my eyes where it's supposed to be because what I have to look at is like over there, you know? However, being able to time and reposition them is a game changer and allows you to show off some real creativity. Baba Booey. The templates option will pre-apply a bunch of these and take away a lot of the work. These are funny and further show what the software is capable of, but personally, I don't really like them. They kind of force you to record the video in a way that fits the template instead of applying the effects so they fit your video. However, it does seem like they have a higher effect limit than you personally do, so I can see them being useful. Anyways, got a little sidetracked there, but none of this packaging stuff really matters because I keep my camera in this little box. Camera! I took some photos in various resolutions, but honestly, they all look like crap compared to the one I took with my Pixel 6. I mean, look, the thing was sold with the games for a reason. It's basically the PSP's iToy, merely an accessory for something else that uses it. It has its purpose and it serves it. I bought mine back in 2020 for less than $11, and I think that's what they're worth. Please do not pay this much for what is ultimately a terrible camera.
You serious?
If you really want to take photos with your PSP in any kind of serious capacity, use the 300 with its 1.3 megapixel lens and 1280 by 960 resolution.
Thanks for your input, PSPMan. After seeing all that, I'm glad I got the 300 camera. But if you do happen to find the 450 being sold at a realistic price, sure, why not? To me, that price would be somewhere between 20 and 30 USD. You can sometimes find them for that price on eBay. As per the 300 camera, I paid roughly 95 USD more than a year ago, and I guess as a hardcore PSP enthusiast, it's an acceptable price, but I wouldn't suggest paying any more than that. I'd value the thing personally around 70 USD, and that's only because of how rare it is. If they weren't rare and nobody cared about them, let's be honest, neither would probably cost more than 15 USD. Really late addition to this video, but I wanted to mention how you can actually use a USB OTG cable to connect your PSP to your phone, and even transfer photos over, so you can live tweet using your PSP camera. I've done it before, it's crazy. This is also the cable that I use for everything PSP. It's just a short USB-C, and I have a mini B USB and barrel jack adapter that I switch between whenever I need to. You really gotta use this setup because it makes everything so much easier. And this is an awesome secondhand case that I found from a thrift store. It holds everything. It's awesome. I don't know where you can get one, but yeah, very convenient indeed.
I don't mean to disturb your lovely family, but have you heard of the PSP? I don't mean to disturb you or your lovely family, but have you heard of the PSP?
PSP?
Alright, now let's go over music playback. I have done a whole video nearly dedicated to playing music on PSP, but I figured I'd do a quick rundown anyways and give you some updates. In that video, I got a fair number of comments saying I had forgotten to mention how the PSP can run lossless FLACs. But no, it can't. Not natively, at least. There are some homebrew applications that will let you, and maybe that's what they meant? Either way, we'll talk about that a bit later. If you do want to play lossless music on your PSP, one option is to convert your FLAC files into WAV. It will consume more storage space, though. PSP uses a Wolfson DAC similar to older iPods, which to many is considered superior to modern-day phones. But upon researching this, that's a heavy subject of debate. Yeah, the PSP sounds great with good headphones, but so does my Galaxy S23. There's no real issue with listening to music on your PSP. I previously said it could become my new standard, but you're eventually going to run into some inconveniences like how you can't easily create playlists here. You have to use a PC or PS3 or put everything into individual folders, but that comes with its own restrictions. There's just no ability to do any of this within the device itself. Depending on who you are, that might become a problem because, well, in my case, I like to create playlists sometimes on the fly. Oh hey, these guys like rock music? Well, I don't have a rock playlist yet. Let me just throw one together and we can vibe. But with my PSP, unless I've already decided to separate them into folders, then I'm out of options. And the speaker, well, you can always use something external. The PSP speaker isn't bad, but, you know, it's a product of its time. So one application that's often mentioned is Light MP3, which, yes, does let you load FLAC files. You can also make playlists here, and its presentation is quite solid, with numerous themes that you can switch to if you like. There's a lot of options here, and sure, this is technically superior to the XMB's music player, but you will need to access it from the game folder, so booting into it will take some time. Yeah, you can disable the PSP game boot animation, but compare this all with any modern music device, and I just can't see any reason to prioritize your PSP. What about the PSP Go with its Bluetooth capability? Well, I did use this in my car for a while, until the lack of convenience started to really kick in. My phone will connect to the car speaker and automatically start playing music, whereas with the PSP Go, I have to at least turn it on and make a selection. When it comes to, you know, just getting up to drive somewhere, you want things to be as quick and easy as possible. The PSP Go just doesn't cut it today, although I'm sure it did at one point in time. So video playback is also something I've talked about extensively. I'll keep this one quick. Video playback on the PSP is quite user-friendly, and I've never had any issue using it. There's absolutely a charm in watching videos on one, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it, and that's largely because you have to convert your files first for them to work. AVS Video Converter is often regarded as the best choice for this. Hypothetically, you could convert some YouTube recipe videos for meals that you frequently make, but yeah, I mean, you'd have to go out of your way for this as opposed to just streaming the video directly on your phone. Look, we all get it, it's old tech, why would you even bother doing this? I know, but that's kind of the whole point of this video. You would not do this, but you could. You can even convert entire movies, which might be good for a road trip or something. The problem is, at least in my experience, converting longer videos for the PSP can take an awfully long time. I could see someone keeping the conversion process running in the background of their computer while they do other stuff, so at the day's end you've got a full season of a TV show to watch on it, and there are probably some people out there that could benefit from this, but myself, I've got more than enough devices that can do this instantly without any kind of conversion process. You probably do as well, so why bother? Another thing is how the PSP can't stand upright on its own, so maybe find some kind of 3D print first? In case you're wondering, yeah, there did used to be some homebrew streaming apps for the PSP, but they never worked well from my experience. Also, they had a tendency to only show adult content, even for that one YouTube app, you know, back when YouTube wasn't as strictly moderated. While you can still connect to the internet on a PSP using modern firmware alternatives, I highly doubt these are at all functional anymore. There's still something hypnotic about this 15 years later. Yeah, this is NyanCat PSP, which isn't technically running a video, it's just a series of repeating images. This was a popular homebrew app back when, though I should specify that NyanCat rose to popularity in 2011, and by that point in time, the 3DS was already out for a couple of months. Most people had moved on from the PSP, but some, like myself, did hold on to the thing because of just how committed its fanbase was. Technically, the PSP was still getting official releases at that time, but those were mostly coming out in Japan. The point is, nonetheless, people loved their PSPs. Oh, and speaking of Japan, there was a TV tuner accessory you could buy at one point, kinda like the Game Gear. I've never used one of these myself, though I'm told it does still work in certain countries. You can find videos of it working online, so check that out if you're interested. My last topic for the day is gaming, which, was the main focus of the PSP. The available library is worth picking through, overall fairly decent. I've always seen it like a sort of lost generation between the PS1 and PS2. Recently I've been playing a bit of Luxor. Pretty fun. It creates 2 individual save files for God knows why. I don't play many games in general these days, otherwise I'd probably have more to say here. Though whenever I go to sleep at night, I do occasionally play an Atari game or two on a PSP emulator, just to see if I can beat some high score. If you're curious about homebrew games, I do have videos about that already. The only homebrew game I still play is PSP Jump, which is just a remake of an existing phone game.
Just gonna play some PSP Jump right quick. Gotta get those springs.
I always keep Geometry Wars Portable installed too, but hardly ever boot into it. A build of Half-Life in Zash 3D was ported by Crowbar and last updated in 2022, so could be the final release. I know I'm kinda randomly inserting this into the script, but it's not bad. I didn't care for the original controls, but replaced them with a guide in the GitHub. So now I use the analog stick to move, face buttons for the camera, D-pad left and right to switch weapons, D-pad up to use, D-pad down to reload, L to jump so I can jump while moving, and R to fire. Start is for the menu, and select brings up the console. I don't think I can customize those two. In the end, I don't have access to the secondary fire modes, flashlight, or ability to duck because, well, the PSP doesn't have enough buttons for it. Either way, this is surprisingly playable. If I had this back in the day, I'd be playing it non-stop. There was a Quake-based version of Half-Life long ago on the PSP, but it was largely non-functional. This really is a mind-blowing port, and despite it being a weird way to play this game, boy is it charming. Very stable, too. I'm yet to encounter a crash. It almost feels official. Alright, let's wrap things up. I did want to include a few other apps, but they're not compatible with modern firmware. Usually ones published after 2009 will work, but even then, no guarantees. You can use eLoader to boot them in most cases, if you've got your heart set on something. One problem I have with a lot of homebrew, the launcher image isn't entirely obvious, so you have to become familiar with the icon over time to be able to quickly launch into them. And that might not sound like a big deal, but in the big 2026, we expect a certain level of convenience. I also ended up clicking the wrong thing a bunch of times, then I had to wait to exit it, then find the right one. If you're already making a custom icon for your app, why not make it obvious? I don't know, maybe this is nitpicking.
I don't even know what this one is. What is this one?
It was fun to goof around with the PSP like this again, though curiosity is really the only reason to do this anymore. I will likely uninstall most of these once the video is finished. Actually, let's see. Which of these are actually worth keeping? That flashlight app's strobe effect was kinda neat for lighting up figures and diecasts. Realistically, you could just find a YouTube video on your phone, but fine enough to keep and fool around with from time to time. The voice recorder's also good to have, especially if you don't own a PSP camera. Otherwise, I'm not sure how you'd get any use out of it. But this only applies if you have a 3000 or Go, because I believe all the other models don't have one unless it's external. Now, please don't think I'm saying that these other apps suck. It's nothing like that. I just don't see why you'd use them today. I think I'm really hitting hard on this point, but it's kind of an unavoidable point. They were designed for someone who had their PSP on them at all times, and to be that person today? Well, aren't you just a fun and quirky person, huh? Even if you were to do this, getting into these apps takes much longer than it would for the phone equivalent, where simple apps like these load instantaneously. If you're sure you still want to try this stuff, you'd have much better luck doing it all on a PS Vita instead, which for what it can do, is still quite fast. Should you consider using a PS Vita as your everyday device? Probably not, but you'd be better off with this than a PSP. The Vita is more expensive to buy, but I think the extra money you put into it is absolutely worth the upgrade. Even a year ago, I might be heads or tails about it, but the Vita scene has just exploded with a community that still actively supports it and new people joining the scene every other day. While the PSP hasn't been completely abandoned, the grand majority of people have at this point moved on to the Vita. I think with this video, I've now shown off everything I ever knew about the PSP. With the exception of multiplayer gaming, which in theory I could do a video about someday. Anything else like the digital comics app and Sends Me, yeah, I've heard about them but never actually used before. So that's it. Before heading out, I would like to mention that we have a Discord server up and running now, with movie nights taking place every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. We also compete with high score submissions for arcade and Atari games. That's been lots of fun, so I hope you'll join in. As always, thanks for watching everyone, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.